You can tell I'm quite relaxed today because I haven't ironed my t-shirt. Today I'm going to be speaking about the Darlington Gaelic Society. And the Darlington Gaelic Society was incredibly important to me, very, very important in my upbringing, my development of knowledge of Highland culture of the Gaeltacht, particularly, and also Scottish culture in general. So my great grandfather and my grandfather had to leave the Highlands both individually and separately. And the reason for that was really due to the lack of work in Scotland, the lack of work in the Highlands in particular, after both the First World War and the Second World War. And young working men were really badly treated by the way things were done at that time. They came back from war, especially after the First World War, expecting land to be given to them, expecting to have work. And it just didn't materialize. So there was a lot of young men who managed to survive the First World War, returned to their Highland homes, and then had to leave again to find work. So really from the 1920s to the 1960s, there was a huge amount of people leaving the Highlands of Scotland, some going to Glasgow and Edinburgh and the Central Belt in general, but many having to go further afield. And that included my great-grandfather going down to London, and my grandfather going down originally to Merseyside and then into Yorkshire. And that happened to a lot of Scots. Darlington was a place that had an awful lot of Highlanders, and particularly people from the Outer Hebrides moving there. And one of the many reasons for this was that there was a company in Glasgow who used to go and get workers to work in particularly the railway industry. And I vaguely remember a conversation when I was about maybe 12 years old or maybe 13 years old with somebody from South Uist who told me that what had happened is basically there was enough work in Glasgow, so this Glasgow company wasn't finding young working men who were willing to leave at that particular time. I'm not entirely sure what time period this is. It might be the 1950s, maybe a little bit earlier. And so they went to the Outer Hebrides, and two places they went was North and South Uist. And that's where this individual who was telling me this story came from. And the story goes that that many young people from maybe one or two villages went with this company and went down to Darlington. Now, a bit more research is needed into that for me to give you more factual detail, but the truth is that there were these people ending up in Darlington for whatever reason. As well as the railways, there was also a company called Cummins Engineering, and there was also a company, a textile firm that moved from Alloa in 1951, I think it was. And there were also many other reasons for people moving down to Darlington. It's a very well connected place. It is, of course, the home of the passenger railway, the Darlington to Stockton Railway in the early 1800s, 1820s, I think it was the first passenger railway. And so railway engineering, if you like, has a home there. And that's why a lot of Highlanders ended up in Darlington. So yeah, lots of different reasons. But what it meant was that there was this kind of society of Gaelic speakers who were sort of, whether they decided to move or not, they were kind of ripped out of their homelands, and they were planted in this northeast English town. And of course, that means their culture isn't going to disappear. Of course, they're not going to suddenly forget who they are. And so they set up a singing group to begin with. And then this kind of transformed into the Darlington Gaelic Society. The society effectively started as this singing group. And then from singing, of course, in Gaelic culture, Ceilidhs begin to happen. A Ceilidh is a meeting of people, and it's a time when people get together, tell stories, sing songs, dance, play music, all of these wonderful parts of Gaelic culture. And that, for me, is where I learned an awful lot of things. So very, very important in my development. So I've got here the constitution of the Darlington Gaelic Society. And this is the 1993 version of the Constitution, amended in May 1993. But it says on here that the motto is Suas Lis a Gaelic, which means long live Gaelic, effectively, survive the Gaelic. And it says that it was instituted, the Darlington Gaelic Society, on the 25th of September 1968. So yeah, it's perfect timing for the end of that period when people were moving and leaving the Highlands and also Scotland to find work in England as well. So the objects of the society from the Constitution, it says here, the aims of the society shall be to encourage and promote A, the teaching, learning and use of the Gaelic language through Uncommon Gaelic, educational bodies and private individuals. That certainly happened for me. I'm still learning Gaelic. I will always be learning Gaelic because of the Darlington Gaelic Society. So, job done. B, the music, song and literature of Scotland, particularly that in the Gaelic language. The first time I heard a Mod gold medalist sing was at a Darlington Gaelic Society Ceilidh in the November of the year. The music and song of Gaelic Scotland, well, the first time I think I heard bagpipes or solo piping, here's Bran here, was at a Darlington Gaelic Society Burns Supper. And I'm currently learning to be a piper, and that's something I want to continue as well. So again, job done. C, social functions with a predominantly Gaelic and Scottish content. Well, their social functions opened up my eyes to the world of the Gaeltacht. D, good fellowship among its members at all times. I mean, that goes without saying. I find that was always the case. So again, support for and cooperation with Uncommon Gaelic, the Highland Association. So in my latter years with the National Trust for Scotland, I was seconded to Balnain House, which is the NTS's Highland office, but it's also the Inverness office of Uncommon Gaelic. And so when I was there, I managed to sit and talk with members of Uncommon Gaelic about the Darlington Gaelic Society. It turns out that they were one of only two officially recognised Uncommon Gaelic societies in England. The other one was in Manchester. And the Darlington Gaelic Society Cup is still presented every year to primary school choirs at the national mod. So that's good examples of the support and cooperation for Uncommon Gaelic that the Darlington Gaelic Society gave, and they also gave donations to the national mod as well. There's also here F, participative and financial support for the Royal National Mod and of Uncommon. So there we go. That was certainly the case. And G, the wearing of Highland dress. Now, I was taught how to properly wear a kilt by I believe he was a major in a Highland regiment who was a member of Darlington Gaelic Society. And that, for me, still stands up today as one of the most important lessons I could have possibly been taught at such a young age. So I think I was about the age of 13 when he said to me, "You're wearing that wrong, here's how to do it." So yeah, the wearing of Highland dress and wearing it correctly was certainly a big part of my learning that I took from the Darlington Gaelic Society as well. So I think it's very fair to say that in terms of the Darlington Gaelic Society Constitution and the objects of the society, they succeeded on every level as far as I was concerned, and it gave me some great lessons in life. So thank you to the Darlington Gaelic Society for that. part of the reason that I'm posting this video now is because I was reminded that it was 7 years ago on the 17th of November that the last ever Darlington Gaelic Society Ceilidh took place in Darlington, or just outside Darlington, in a place called Piercebridge. So the George in Piercebridge was where the Ceilidhs used to take place, and also the Burns suppers. Now, at that last ever Ceilidh, I was invited basically because I'd taken so much from the society, and I'd moved to the Highlands, and I was working at that time at Culloden Battlefield to give the address and the toast to the society. So the last ever toast to the society, and I thought, well, yeah, I can go down and I can say, this society meant a lot to me, and it did this, that, and the next thing for me, and thanks everyone for the stories you gave me, which, to be fair, that is something I must mention. The stories that I got from people standing at the bars, sitting at the tables, eating the food, it was a gold mine of information for me. Folklore, culture, stories, histories, arguments about how to say certain Gaelic words between people from South Uist and North Uist. Just an amazing world that opened up to me in these meetings. And so, yeah, I could have just rambled on about that, and I could have done it in English, and I could have done it fairly easily. But what I wanted to do, because it was the last ever Ceilidh, was I wanted to take my recent Gaelic learning, which at that time was the case 2012, and I wanted to say something in Gaelic, but I didn't really know enough Gaelic to give a speech. And so what I did is I spent quite a bit of time with a colleague and friend from Culloden Battlefield, who was from the west coast of Lewis, and she spoke very good Gaelic, but she didn't read and write it. And so I said to her, look, this is what I want to say. Can you tell me how to say it in Gaelic? And so she told me. And because I've been reading Gaelic for many years, my writing and reading of Gaelic is better than my spoken Gaelic. And so I was able to write down in Gaelic what she was saying to me over the course of a few lunch times and a few evenings, trying to figure it out. And so in the end, we got what I thought was a relatively okay speech. And so I went down to Darlington and I delivered this speech at the last ever Ceilidh, and it started Smisha Indra Gran McCunich Hami legal stech agus balracht manager Ersen Urish Nashanta na Halaba ak Arak Vla Culloden, because at that time I was the admissions and membership manager at Culloden Battlefield. And then it rolled on from there, talking about my interest that I took from the society, my first drinking of whiskey, which happened on a Burns evening, all the lessons I learnt going to the Darlington Gaelic Society Ceilidhs. And at the end of it, I thought, well, somebody might have understood a few words. And then so I gave the whole thing in English. And as I gave it in English, there was kind of mutterings around the room, sort of, right, okay, that's what he meant. And it was great because there was obviously some things that I hadn't pronounced quite perfectly, and as I've already mentioned, different areas of the Highlands, different islands in the Hebrides will pronounce and say things slightly differently, and so obviously there were things that people had remembered and they were going to be asking me about, but when I said it in English it made more sense. And the medalist from the mod who was singing that evening came up to me afterwards and he said, "You need to work on your pronunciation of a few words, but it's okay, not bad." And that to me was a huge pat on the back. That was I was really pleased about that, actually. And I was very glad to have been able to do that, because I don't know how many people go the opposite way from these societies. These Gaelic societies that are now all over the world. I mean, think of America, think of Canada, think of Australia, New Zealand. There's Gaelic societies or Highland societies or Scottish societies, St Andrews societies, all these different societies that are celebrating culture for people who have moved away from that culture where it's home is. So it's all about, for me, dúchas, which is the Gaelic word which means belonging. It means you're part of the earth. It means where you come from as well. And so these societies tend to exist when people move away. I don't know of many examples of these societies taking somebody from the roots of a family that have moved away and reigniting that cultural interest within that family, if you like. And so I hope that I will continue to develop my awareness, my knowledge of the Gaeltacht, of the Gaelic language, of Gaelic music, all these things that are in this Darlington Gaelic Society constitution and the aims of the society. Because for me, it opened doors, it opened windows into who I am now, you know. This is my version of dúchas. I belong to this culture, but I had to find that out for myself. It didn't just present itself to me. So I think it's an incredibly interesting thing. I'd like to thank the Darlington Gaelic Society and the people who still remain from it for the 44 years that society was around, 1968 to 2012. I wish it was still around, but now that it isn't, I hope that in many ways I can fulfill all of the objects of that society and continue them in some way through what I do with Highland History in future years as well. So I also mentioned the word dúchas there, and I'll put a video up about that at some point. That's a very important Gaelic word for me. It's one that makes a lot of sense to me. It doesn't make sense in English though. You can't just translate dúchas into a simple English phrase or something. You have to really try and pick it apart in English to make it make sense. And that's the beauty of the Gaelic language. It is so descriptive and so emotive that, you know, there's words that mean so much more than sentences do and paragraphs do and pages do in English when you say them to somebody who understands. And that's a beautiful thing. I also spoke a bit about belonging and where you're from. And I do mention this on my website. There's a question in Gaelic which is cuasa how, and is quite often taken as a who are you, and you could answer saying Smisha Andrew, my name's Andrew. But cuasa how, it means more than that. It means sort of what are you, who are you, where are you from, you know. All of these things can come from that question, and so, you know, part of that answer is that I'm from where my family is from. You could answer with the estate that you're from, the clan that you're from. You know, my answer would probably be something like Eindra Macallian, Vichian, Vic David, Vichian. Lots of generations of my family, followed by, you know, where you were born, where you were brought up, where you moved to. You know, you could add all of these things. Nicknames could be in there as well. This is where a lot of Gaelic words and Gaelic names come from, is these longer variations of naming. And so I'll maybe post something about that at another time as well. But all of that is linked to, for me, the Darlington Gaelic Society and opening up my interest in my family's past, and also the past of the Highlands, which I'm hoping to share with you all.